Pyromancy catalysts are the catalysts responsible for one of the most well-loved categories of magic in all of Souls, Pyromancy. Fireballs, fans, self-buffs, weapon buffs, pillars of fire, and healing beacons. I mean, this category has it all. And there are a grand total of 2 Pyromancy flames in the entire game of Dark Souls 3. That's right. But it does have one weapon catalyst hybrid weapon and a talisman for no reason. So instead of ranking them, I'm gonna explain which is best for what. And yes, I will be including the Demon Scar. Yes, I know, it's technically not a pure catalyst, but let's roll with it. So in order to determine which catalyst is actually the best, we actually have to look at what's important for spell catalysts. And I kind of broke this down into a couple different categories. So let me just quickly give a quick overview. We first have scaling, then accessibility, flexibility, the skill, magic category buffs, and extra bonuses. Some of these don't apply to every weapon on this list, and to be honest, that's not a bad thing. It's just something to keep in mind. Not every single weapon or catalyst is going to have all of these, bonuses. So with this in mind, I'm going to kind of explain which one of the catalysts wins out in each category. And the first category we're going to go with is scaling. So scaling really is meant to ensure a powerful spell buff, and it genuinely gives better spell power for damage spells in particular. For most people, this is the most important part of a catalyst. And so, with that in mind, the normal parting flame, or rather Pyromancy flame, gets double C scalings at a +10, which is really good, since this is a C scaling in both intelligence and faith, which you will be needing in order to actually use Pyromancies. The parting flame also gets double C scalings at a +10 in intelligence and faith, though they are worse than the normal Pyromancy flame. The white hair talisman gets a D and C in intelligence and faith respectively at a +5, and the demon scar gets double C scalings at a +5. So based on this, the clear worst scaler is the white hair talisman, which does not have those double Cs. So what about the others? Currently they seem pretty much the same, but under the surface they really aren't. As I previously stated, the normal flame actually has the best scaling with its double Cs, which are higher than the other two, meaning it actually wins this category. For most builds, this will undoubtedly have the highest spell buff in the entire game. So the second thing I tend to look at when looking at catalysts in general is accessibility. So for this, I'm really looking at when you get it and the stats requirement of the catalyst. So when you get it is usually based on the location it's in, with the bosses and hazards required to get it, while for stat requirements it's just pretty straightforward. So the first of these is location. The normal flame is actually starting equipment or gotten in Undead Settlement from an NPC questline. Safe to say, it is the earliest pickup you could possibly get. The Parting Flame, on the other hand, is in a hidden area in one of the DLCs. Now, it is the first of the 2 DLCs, but that is still really frustrating, especially since I actually could not find this area even with wiki guides. Although that might just be a skill issue, I'm going to take it out on this weapon. The White Hair Talisman is in the Smoldering Lake, in a massive lava room that requires very heavy fire resistance to get through it without dying. Now, sure, you can suicide run, but I don't want to lose my runes for this thing. And finally, the Demon Scar requires killing of one of the first bosses in the second post-endgame DLC. That's right, you have to kill the first boss of the post-endgame DLC, which is pretty far into it. I would say it's actually more like the halfway point of the DLC, at least for the most part. So, in reality, it's pretty far back there. And based upon all of this, it's pretty easy to say that the normal flame is by far the easiest to get. There is literally no competition. But what about stat requirements? So, the normal flame actually has solid zeros for stat requirements. That's right. It literally means that anybody can use this thing without damage penalties and the spell buff debuffs that happen when you try to use a catalyst without the proper requirements. The Parting Flame actually has a really weird 15 strength requirement and a 10 in intelligence and faith requirements, which is, compared to the normal flame, very high. The Whitehair's Talisman only requires a 4 in strength, but a 16 in intelligence and a 20 in faith to use properly. And the Demon Scar has a 16 dex requirement with double 17 requirements for int and faith, which both of those last two are not so bad where you find them, and the Parting Flame isn't that bad for where you find it either. But compared to just flat zeros, that's gonna look bad. So, if you can guess, yes, the normal flame clears easily for accessibility. For accessibility as a whole, it's just the best. I can't even explain it any further. So, therefore, for almost anyone, the normal flame is easily the greatest in the game. These two categories, scaling and accessibility, are usually what determines, a catalyst's worth to the majority of players. However, there are still some really good points for the other catalysts too, so I do want to talk about their categories and what they excel at, where the normal flame might not be as good. So the third category I want to look at is flexibility. So the normal flame and parting flame are not very flexible. Sure, the normal flame is nasty, and the parting flame has a cool skill, I guess, but at the end of the day, they are simply just meant for throwing fireballs and buffing. And that's where the Whitehair's Talisman and the Demon Scar comes in. The Whitehair Talisman is not just a Pyromancy catalyst, but it's actually a miracle catalyst as well. And that is why it's flexible. Now sure, it isn't the best at doing either, but it is miracles and pyromancies in the exact same slot. And since buffs don't really need that much scaling, this is probably one of, if not the best, buffing talisman or catalyst in the entire game. For damage, it's pretty bad, but for buffing, it's a really powerful ally. Oath of Sunlight with Karthus Beacon and the works, just with one catalyst in the old inventory, doesn't sound great to some people. And I have to say, you're wrong. It is really good, because if that doesn't sound good to you buff junkies out there, then I genuinely don't know what will. As for the Demon Scar, it's a weapon catalyst. I mean, can you see the flexibility? If you can't, this is the only curved sword with a crit modifier above 100, the only weapon that isn't a catalyst that does 0 physical damage in place of pure fire damage, and it has a weight of 0.5. I mean, seriously, do I need to say more? So now, let's talk a little bit about skills. There is one catalyst with a crazy skill for pyromancy, and guess what? Yeah, it's the Parting Flame. Like, literally, what else could it be? It is a very basic skill, but it basically gives HP back based upon the enemies you've killed. Now, I know that sounds but it's the most unique skill here. Yeah, it's actually not that good. For a regen build, it's actually a pretty great option, especially since there are actually quite a few pyromancies that do restore HP over time. So, yeah, maybe we should just move on. The next category is magic buffs, specifically like buffs for a specific magic category. So, for some catalysts, certain types of magic basically can be buffed when you cast it with that item. You see this more in Elden Ring than you do in Dark Souls 3. But for stuff like the Izalath Staff and Dark Sorceries, it kind of has that synergy, and that's what I'm looking for. However, this is not the case for any Pyromancy catalysts, so do not worry about magic category buffs when you're trying to choose one. As for special bonuses, there are no really extra special bonuses for Pyromancy Flames, except maybe the fact that the Parting Flame takes more stamina to cast with, and so that's really it. And so, with all of that in mind, what is the best Pyromancy catalyst overall? And the answer is easily the normal Pyromancy Flame, and there is a lot of reasons why. This is the most accessible catalyst by far for this category, with early pickup and non-existent requirements. This thing also gets the highest spell buff with the best scaling out of all the others. Plus, that skill is pretty decent and can actually have some utility. So yes, it is the best. But there is one other that's really good. The Demon Scar. This is one of, if not my favorite, weapon catalyst in the entire game. Not only is it a weapon catalyst, but it actually does pure fire damage with pretty much solely Intelligence Faith scaling, which is really good for a Pyromancer. Plus, having that low weight leads to less stat investment, and since as a Pyromancer you're going to be investing most of your stat in Intelligence and Faith, which is two separate stats, having a lower weight really does allow you to not have to invest as much into your vitality. Plus, a 110 crit modifier never hurt anyone. Genuinely, this is a weapon with a ton of benefits, and it can cast pyromancies. Now, obviously, the Whitehair's Talisman is also really good, and I personally would say, yeah, it's a really good buffing talisman. But for pyromancy, it's a little bit iffy. I could recommend it for just about any buffing build, but for a pure pyromancy build, and from a pure pyromancy perspective, it's just not the best choice by any means. So yeah, those are my thoughts and opinions for pyromancy catalysts. In my opinion, the worst by far is the Parting Flame, since it's actually a hidden DLC item with less scaling, more stamina cost, horrible spell buff, and a mediocre skill. I mean, I could go on and on about how crap I think this thing is. Even if it is unique, it's just not good. So this wasn't really a ranking as much as it was a discussion. I don't really see the point of ranking these, since one is a talisman and one is a weapon catalyst, leaving literally 2 flames that are pyromancy exclusive. So thanks for sitting down and watching this, and as always, happy hunting.